What are video games like for people who don't play them? This is a question that has been asked and answered for many different games by people on YouTube, most notably by Razbuten. Usually the goal is to see how a new player approaches mechanics we are familiar with, but they aren't. My goal, however, is slightly different. I want to take a dive into my and your childhood to unearth video games we played as kids, and then show them to my girlfriend who doesn't play video games. This will hopefully allow us to deduce whether these games are actually approachable to new, unfamiliar players, or if these iconic titles are just propped up by our nostalgia. As a fun way of measuring her progress over these installments, I've structured them so that the first and last are two different versions of Minecraft, namely Minecraft Xbox 360 Edition and Minecraft Beta 1.7.3. After playing 8 different games between these two versions, we might be able to see how her ability has grown quite clearly when she plays Minecraft for the second time. The series is entirely funded by my Patreon, by the way, so thank you so much to those who have joined. Oh, and if anyone's worried about the similarity with Raz's videos, I have his approval. Terraria, as you probably well know, has been around for quite some time, and while it still has a strong player base today, I still largely associate it with my childhood, as you might also, seeing as you clicked on this video. Now, I grew up playing Terraria's legacy console version, which is why the thumbnail has the Terraria Xbox 360 arcade cover for the game, but seeing as the console version doesn't hold any particularly exclusive features, aside from fewer updates and a boss she certainly won't get to, I thought I would get my girlfriend, Jemima, started with modern Terraria. Before you recoil at the thought of this, she's going to be playing quite a few games that have pretty inaccessible older versions, such as Gmod. But if the start or core experience of the game is largely kept intact as the same experience throughout updates over the years, that's all I'm really concerned with. So Jemima booted up the game and proceeded to name everything after herself, as she did in the previous installment of this series, if you haven't seen that. Speaking of, the switch to Terraria on Steam from previously playing on console last time meant that she had to accustomize herself to new controls, a keyboard and mouse. Now, while not as unfamiliar to her as a controller was, utilizing both of these tools simultaneously in order to play Terraria properly was going to have a bit of a learning curve. Not having any reason to know that there are segmented biomes in the map in this game, some more safe than others, Jemima kept walking to the right as if playing a Super Mario Bros.-esque side-scroller. And that's because that's what Terraria looked like to her as a non-gamer who definitely has at least seen briefly what those incredibly popular Mario games look like. Unfortunately, this meant she encountered a couple vultures. Shockingly, Jemima intuitively knew how to heal herself using mushrooms she broke off the ground. Unfortunately, this wasn't enough to keep her alive, and after respawning, she used the help of the guide to mine some trees and also gathered some dirt.
Help. Happiness.
She once again discovered some yellow flowers, as she did during her time in Minecraft Xbox 360 Edition.
Yellow flowers.
She then dug a hole downward into the darkness and managed to mine her way into being stuck underground and, as night came, surrounded by zombies. I never could have imagined she would have gotten herself into this predicament on her first night, but I guess it's better than her repeatedly dying to nighttime mobs on the servers.
Stuart, this is so scary. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to...
Luckily, she had accidentally blindly carved her cave out in a way that meant zombies couldn't reach her. Not to mention, she finally figured out how to build. After getting a bit of extra help from me, she managed to craft her first couple torches. After this confidence boost, Jemima took on a whole horde of zombies herself, from her dirt ledge. She also encountered a new mob in the process.
Why is there a flying eyeball? This is creepy.
As Jemima's first night was coming to an end, I realized how much Terraria just drops you into its world, with no tips to access outside of the brief conversations with the guide. Very different from the experience of playing, say, Minecraft Xbox 360 Edition. On the start of her second day, Jemima ran through the desert once again, getting a bit further than before. She does seem to like the silliness Terraria has to offer.
Umbrella slime, that's so cute.
With a heavy suggestion from me to listen to the guide more, Jemima crafted her first workbench. Unknowingly, she crafted a wall thinking it would protect her from the elements. Unfortunately, it obviously doesn't. After a bit of fiddling around with the crafting menu, which she also didn't find very intuitive, she finally got around to building her first defensive structure.
Ta-da! Look at my pretty house.
However, soon after, she said the one thing all Terraria fans hate to hear.
It's like Minecraft but in 2D.
It turns out that if one is willing to read it, the help feature from the guide is super, well, helpful to new players.
What? If I build more houses, will people move into them? That's so cute.
I noticed I was doing a bit more backseat gamering than usual, but hopefully that doesn't bother you too much, as Jemima was clearly not having as smooth of a first experience here as she was in the previous installment of the series, and I definitely wasn't giving anything big away. In between the 2 recording sessions we did for this video, Jemima also discovered my 2 Terraria manuals and jokingly said that she should read through them thoroughly while on holiday if she had any hope of fully understanding the game. I didn't let her, because obviously, spoilers, but I do think these books hold a twinge of nostalgia for me and many others, so I thought I'd include this tidbit. After this brief break from the game, Jemima seemed to have forgotten how to use most of the controls.
I've forgotten how to do everything.
To be honest, it took a lot to get Jemima to play again. I think due to the steep learning curve she was experiencing. Honestly, thinking back, we had nothing but time as kids to play endless hours on a new video game or even get our friends to show us how it's done. But these things aren't really realistic or available to a non-gamer in their 20s. There simply isn't the same amount of time to absorb the game like that. And that's partly what the series is all about. Filtering the games that seem to not require that childhood level of time to get into them and understand the basics and enjoy them from those that do seem to. And from what I was gathering, Terraria seemed to be more in the camp of the latter for Jemima. Anyway, the guide, Cole, accidentally let a zombie into Jemima's newly furbished abode, and I think she was starting to build some resentment for this roommate of hers.
What the f? Why would you do that? I hate Cole. Don't come in my house, Cole.
And her resentment of nighttime in this game was even more obvious. Instead of choosing to mine while night raged outside, she just sat and watched, sighing. With a little encouragement from me, she did some mining to pass the time. She even started what looked to be the beginnings of a elevator. I even tipped her on wooden platforms to give her the confidence to keep mining straight down, but she wasn't really interested in mining. Interestingly, mining away at tiny individual blocks from such a far distance made her incredibly anxious.
Little, like, destroying all these little blocks. It feels very, like, little and finicky, and, like, it makes me feel anxious. Yes, it gives me this, like, tight feeling in my chest. When I'm like doing little things.
As day approached, the sky still thundering, Jemima encountered a huge tree with treasure close inside, something she definitely appreciated.
Whoa, there's a whole underground thing. Okay, this is cool now.
After showing her how to equip the aglet she found, Jemima made a good point. How was she supposed to know how to do that as a non-gamer? For all her critiques of this game not being very approachable to a new player, she really did love this tree area. I wouldn't be surprised if she just moved in here. After checking out her first cave, she didn't seem too impressed and teleported home using her first potion. Thinking it was getting dark, Jemima encountered the corruption for the first time. She teleported home, but because I had missed what just happened, I asked her to show me again what she just saw. Returning to the corruption, she encountered 2 Eaters of Souls, and this death was the final straw.
Okay. Yeah, this isn't that fun. I don't like the Eaters of Souls. And I don't like mining, it's so too difficult. In Minecraft you can just like hit the things in front of you. The blocks are too like small and far away, it's difficult. There's so many things trying to kill me all the time. I feel like I can't even survive while I'm exploring. Yeah, that's my thoughts.
Jemima did have a few things to say, as you just heard, but ultimately Terraria had too many aspects working against her for her to enjoy it as a non-gamer. Now, to get down to the question of if Terraria is approachable to non-gamers or if it's just propped up by our nostalgia, let's take a look at Jemima's experience. The keyboard and mouse had a much less intense learning curve than a controller, although she did lose her touch with the controls after a break from playing the game. With her small amount of pop culture knowledge of games, she misinterpreted the visual aesthetic of Terraria to be a side-scrolling platformer rather than a sandbox boss fighting game, which led to a lot of irritation as to why she couldn't easily progress along the map. Terraria does have a tips feature, which, once you discover that it's there and decide to follow the guide's advice, is actually rather helpful. The issue, for a non-gamer anyway, lies in the fact that the tips aren't context-specific, like the way they were when Jemima played Minecraft Xbox 360 edition. Instead of it working with a tip coming up when you find a new ore, Terraria has one localized tip station in the form of the guide, which makes it seem less like you're getting tips on how to use what you see, and more like you're kind of being told what to do so that you don't hate the game's day cycle mechanics when the first night comes, like Jemima did. The crafting menu, inventory, and equipment menu was all rolled into one, and doesn't seem to be very intuitive to new eyes. Jemima also made the good point that even though it's largely a sandbox game, exploring felt incredibly difficult with so much trying to kill her at once. Not to mention her experience of mining was anxiety-inducing for her, and with those two combined, there's little chance to enjoy what the game has to offer. Perhaps if Jemima had the time that we had as kids when we first started playing Terraria, the experience could have grown on her, like it did on us, which is why so many of us have a nostalgic association with it. But ultimately, realistically, Terraria just doesn't seem to be approachable to a non-gamer.